Hello and welcome to the First Issue Club podcast. We're your weekly comic book reading club where, just like Sue Storm, we love a good read. We're here, like I said, to talk about comic books. Were you not listening? Shove your little earbuds deeper into your ear holes until they're right up against those eardrums, babe. We're talking comics. This is the premier First Issue comic book podcast, okay, dear? We're going to be telling you several first issues that have come out this week, a couple last week that we didn't get to last week, just to make sure that you're well aware and kept abreast of all the fun new series that are starting each week, so you can jump on in at any point. Are you a beginner? Do you like superheroes? Do you like abstract sci-fi? Romance? Hey man, yo dog, there's a comic book for you. It's just a medium. It's not a genre anymore.
Mike, I just could let you do that forever.
I probably... I just go in an anxiety-fueled spin cycle until someone interrupts me is kind of my...
And I never want to because it's always so entertaining.
And then they always turn into these like Bill Maher-esque shaming rants. I get more like accusatory. That's not the tone of this show. We're a very positive place. We don't like to give bad reviews of things. For, whatever comic book, even if it's not my cup of tea, it's somebody out there's, and we want to make sure that you find it, right? So we're going to talk about it if we read it. This podcast would be remiss if we didn't mention that this podcast is brought to you by Boulevard, Space Camper, Cosmic IPA. Beautiful beer here. Me and Vargas are drinking this beer, even though we don't have to be contractually obligated to recommend these fantastic beers to you. Boulevard was sweet enough to give us a little contract anyway. They're our official sponsor. We love you, Boulevard and Space Camper. Cosmic IPA, my favorite IPA. They make a ton of varietals of this beer. So if you like an IPA, there's an IPA for you in the Space Camper family.
It makes fulfilling our legal obligations easier
Certainly.
when we would do it anyway.
That's exactly right.
But no one tell Boulevard.
And I promise you, I will never advertise for something I'm morally objected to.
Oh, I would, for sure. I have a price.
What's your level? What would you sell out for?
Are we assuming that it's the worst thing I could possibly advertise for, like Hitler.com?
No, well, let's say Monsanto comes to us.
Ooh.
They want you to read an ad about Monsanto corn seeds.
So that's a tough one because Monsanto is one of the most evil organizations.
The Hitler of agriculture.
They're one of the most evil organizations in the history of humankind. They truly are the Nazis of corn.
Yeah.
But the flip side of that is their pockets are super deep. They can pay.
Yeah.
I mean, like $1,000, right?
$1,000 is a lot of money for a 30-second ad. And I guess next week you can say whatever you want.
Yeah, one time $1,000. Just take down the episode 2 weeks later.
Yep.
Oh Lord.
All right, Andy Vargas's price for making a deal with the devil: $1,000 measly dollars.
$1,000 unless Monsanto actually calls. Then I'm into $1,000 a second. Got him.
There you go. Okay. Sigh of let's move on and get talking about comic books. First, we're going to talk about some comic book news, what's going on that you need to be kept aware of, and then we'll get into the issues that we had the chance to read this week. I, in particular, read a book out on Image called Convert and a book out on Distillery called Life. So I'm covering the indies for you this week. Andy, what do you have coming up?
I made mine Marvel. for the last 2 weeks. I'm covering the biggest books from the House of Ideas. I've got Predator versus Black Panther #1, Phases of the Moon Knight, to everyone's shock. I read that book. Wolverine Revenge, and Aliens versus Avengers.
Fantastic. What a slew of fantastic books we have for you.
But first,
let's talk about the news. You may have seen, if you follow comic books, a couple headlines that there is a movie coming that's going to make The Boys look like Sesame Street.
Oh, boy.
And this is a little movie created or spun off of a comic book called Crossed.
Yeah.
Andy, I think out of the first issue club, which normally consists of the both of us and Greg, who is not with us at this moment, may join us mid-episode. I think you are the biggest Crossed reader or fan. Is that correct?
I'll say, so I've read the first 3 volumes of Crossed.
Yeah.
I'm a huge Garth Ennis fan.
Fantastic writer.
Which was how I fell into Crossed, because I ordered all 3 volumes from my LCS blind, because I was like, yeah, order me 3 volumes. It's Garth Ennis. I'm going to love it.
Yeah, right.
This is the book I tell people not to read.
Yeah.
There's a lot to it. It's saying a lot, but in classic Garth Ennis fashion, it is, I mean, to say it's not for the squeamish is like understating.
Yeah.
This is like the Serbian film of comic books.
Mm-hmm.
This is not, it's for people that are deep in the medium only.
Now, one of the things I'm having a hard time wrapping my head around are if they're going to be able to pull this off. I think you've got like a couple things at play here. One is that if it's not one of the goriest movies you've ever seen in your life, then you're going to have people who say you didn't do Crossed. You gave us a movie with the title Crossed and then didn't honor the subject matter. At the same time, on the other side of this, how do you make a movie this gruesome and despicable, given it's likely a commentary on how awful humanity is, right?
Yeah.
Even though it's a commentary, it's one of the like most famously like gruesome, hard to read comics that's like been created in like the modern era, right?
Yeah.
So how do you make this? Will this at some point hit a production point where they're just like, we can't move forward because we didn't find an elegant way to do it? Like, what's your perspective on that?
So I'm going to blow your mind a little bit here, Mike.
Okay.
But they already made Crossed a movie.
You're kidding. I didn't know that.
It's not called Crossed.
Oh,
it's
okay.
not. It's
this
not
is a bit.
No. It's not a bit.
Oh, it's not a bit. Okay,
it's not a bit. It is. It's a. I'm pretty sure it's South Korean or Taiwanese.
Okay.
It is heavily inspired by Crossed. It's called The Sadness. It came out last year or 2 years ago, 22 or 23.
Okay. 2021.
21. Okay. And it is, it's as close I think you could get to a Crossed movie as would be allowed.
Yeah.
And it is an incredible film. I'll say that. Everything about it is of the highest quality.
Uh-huh.
Again, that being said, don't watch this movie. Like it's doing all those things that you talked about, right? It makes commentary on humanity and the things that we do when we don't have any inhibitions, the underlying motives that people have. It makes a commentary about COVID, because obviously this is like a disease spreading. It's
Yeah.
all of those things.
Should we say really quickly what Crossed is about?
Oh, sure. Yeah. So it's The Walking Dead, but instead of the disease turning people into zombies like traditional zombies, it destroys all inhibitions in a person and makes them, or I think the comic would argue, lets them do whatever they want to do. And it gets its name from like a scar that the disease gives you, where it
like
gives you
splits
like
your face open kind of in an X.
it gives you like I'll call it like a burn or like a rash in across your eyes, and then right down your nose.
Yep.
So the book, that's like the jumping off point, that's the elevator pitch, but the story is somebody asked Garth Ennis about it at Planet when I was sitting in his thing, and he said he wanted to write a story wherein the world ends and the machismo guys that say like, oh yeah, I could survive the end of the world,
Yeah.
like absolutely cannot. And he wanted to show that in a book. And then also makes all those commentaries about like what humanity is, underneath the surface, and all that kind of stuff.
Right.
So that's the jumping off point of Crossed. And I haven't read anything, to be fair, past the first, whatever it is, 40 issues, 50 issues.
That's a lot of time to invest in a series.
Yeah. I mean, it's the first 3 trades.
Yeah. I mean, there's no way the movie's going to cover more than like 3 trades worth of material, right?
No.
Yeah.
Unless they go with Crossed 100 as the source material. That's the Alan Moore book. I haven't read any of that. I haven't read any of because Garth Ennis left and then came back. Somebody wrote it for a while and then he came back and wrote more. So whatever, there's a whole history of that book, but I would imagine that they're going to do the same thing The Sadness did, and kind of just take this as a jumping off point to tell a story, whatever that story is,
right?
Instead of it just being a direct adaptation of the book.
Yeah,
because to your point, do you want a movie where a big fat trucker zombie with a phallus of a horse walks around beating people to death with it?
Yeah.
Like, that's not good.
No, these are the sort of like, you just imagine, like, I guess it's so interesting with this because there's some, like, you appreciate artists who try something like, or like bold enough to try something like this. Yeah. But at the same time, it's like something that I just holistically do not want. Or like, maybe they try this and it's like, was this the best way to communicate this statement or sentiment? Like, I don't know, but you did it. And the world reacted and you got people talking. Like, that could be what this movie is like. And if it's anything like what I expect it to be, I probably won't see it just because I don't like stuff like this. I don't like working all week, needing an escape from reality, and then feeling shitty the rest of the weekend because the movie I watched was like so horrific and sad.
Yeah.
Just a tough one.
Totally.
But yeah, just was shocked to hear that it's like being made a movie. And now I feel like, at least in the comic book community, it's getting so much buzz and press just because of this fact. And like, how are they going to do that?
Yeah.
That it's almost like it has to get made now because there's already hype around it.
I am shocked that this is the book they went with for the next big Garth Ennis adaptation.
Yeah.
Like, we got 4 seasons of Preacher TV show. We got 4 seasons of Boys TV show.
Mm-hmm.
And instead of doing like Just a Pilgrim or Stitched or 303, it has always been my my go-to, like, what should they adapt next? I would absolutely recommend all of those to anybody out there. But they pick like the most Garth Ennis book out there, you know? And I hope somebody asks him what his thoughts on that are. I'm sure he's going to be involved in the production of the movie. And I think I read that he is writing the script. I could be wrong, but I would love to hear his take about what this movie is going to be and whether it's a worthwhile creative endeavor to adapt that story.
Because in the length of a movie, it seems like you're not going to be able to completely like say what you were able to say in like 100 issues of a comic book, right?
Yeah.
So at that point, it doesn't just read as like gore for gore's sake, or
exactly,
horrific body horror stuff for the sake of it.
Yeah.
Ooh.
So all that being said, I will definitely watch that movie and report on it. I for sure will.
You'll take one for the team and let us know how the movie was, and if it's tolerable. Maybe I'll watch it after you watch it.
I don't think it'll be tolerable, but I think it'll be good.
We're assuming this is going to get like an NC-17 rating.
I'm presuming that it will not be released in theaters.
Okay.
I'm
straight
presuming
to streaming.
It will either be straight to streaming or like a straight to DVD thing.
Okay.
But I don't know. Could be wrong. But
Sheesh.
because to your point, like, what if you're not going to do it? Don't do it, right?
Yeah, right. Did Garth Ennis write A Walk Through Hell?
A Walk Through Hell, yes.
A Walk Through Hell.
He wrote one of those Aftershock books.
Yeah, that was Garth Ennis.
Yeah,
that book was really interesting. I mean, it's messed up, but it does it on a scale that's like more of an interesting thought experiment than like, because on paper the plot of Crossed, just written as a sentence, there's a disease that makes people completely lose their inhibition. Like, what happens then? Like, that's a really interesting concept for a movie that sounds like something I would watch, right? But knowing what we know now, having read some of the comics, it's like, no, I actually don't want that.
Yeah. But that's like the point.
Yeah.
That's like exactly the point.
Yeah, right. It's very effective in making the point that it makes about humans and their dark desires and all that stuff. Ugh.
And all right. One last point. Even the voyeurism of the medium, right? Mm-hmm. Where it's like, you made the decision to purchase this book. What does that say about you?
Yeah, right.
You know?
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, all of that, it's just very interesting to me. I've always been fascinated with, like, making terrible things for the sake of art.
Yeah, right.
And I'm really interested in this. It's going to be good.
All right. Let's move on to much lighter fare. It seems so funny to say this headline after just having talked about Crossed.
Uh-huh.
Marvel Comics is getting a bunch of For Dummies books.
Perfect.
The famous series that used to be like Computers for Dummies, the Internet for Dummies. Probably around the time that book would have come out, it was probably called The Net for Dummies. Why don't we say The Net anymore?
Because we can spell internet on our phones and we don't have to worry about text message rates.
Okay, sure.
I don't know. You know, my text, my pager will fit the word internet. I don't have to shorten it to net.
So there's going to be a MCU for Dummies book as part of this.
Okay.
And I think that's maybe one of the like best ideas I've heard for a For Dummies book in a long time. Because even as a self-proclaimed mega fan, it's getting to the point where like I have a tough time keeping up with like all the threads and how the movies are connected. just because I don't have the brain space for it all. So
yeah, you've got a job.
Yeah, a little like pocket guide of like, oh, what happened in this movie? What are the important things to take away from it that are going to end up in this other movie? Like,
Yeah.
I would love like little primers and things before going to each of these. So I thought that was fun. There'll be like funny gifts for people and stuff,
Yeah.
but they're going to do individual characters and teams. So you'll get like a Fantastic Four for dummies, a Spider-Man for dummies. So if that's something where you're just like maybe a newer comic book fan, or even like you've been buying Spider-Man for 10 years and loving it, but you know, who has the time to go back and read every single issue or completely understand the history and lore? It'd be nice to have like a little Cliff Notes cheat sheet. So I think those are a really cool idea, and we'll see if they're successful. Maybe they'll do more, because I could see myself buying like a Black Panther one. Is like, that's like a huge character that like I just don't have a ton of Black Panther comic books, because growing up, like, it was, you know, Spider-Man and Captain America and
Yeah.
Batman.
I think that sounds like a fun for Shishi Club like report.
Yeah.
Because the same way, like, I don't know basically anything about the Fantastic Four.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sure that's going to be one of the first ones they make. So I think that would be great.
Yeah.
I'll report on the Fantastic Four for sure. I'll teach you guys who Robbie the Robot is.
Speaking of Robs,
Amazing.
Rob Liefeld has retired for the 10th time. He announced the other day that he would not be doing any other work for Marvel, as I understand it. And I feel like a while ago he was like, after I do this like Deadpool thing, I'm never doing any other Deadpool stuff again.
Yeah.
So he's more, I don't know that he's done much of anything for any other publisher in a while, except for maybe some like Image homage stuff.
He did. The only thing I can remember is, didn't he write that Soldier comic for Archie?
Oh, did he?
Yeah. He like wrote issue 1 and then he got pissed and quit. Something like that. Whatever.
Interesting,
But
Rob.
that's the only thing I can think of, other than obviously everyone's favorite Marvel character, Major X.
If you don't know, aside from Major X, Rob Liefeld is the creator responsible for Deadpool and Cable, two of the most impactful late 80s, early 90s Marvel comic book characters that kept Marvel afloat in some of the darker times for comic books and comic book purchasing. So he holds a very important place in comic book history, but has kind of become a marked controversial figure in comics. So, and yeah, I feel like I've read that he's like stepping away several times. I hopped on his Whatnot stream the other day after this news broke, and he was selling like an exclusive and kind of talked about himself stepping away, but he urged fans to continue to buy Deadpool stuff, even though he would no longer be involved, because he's still going to get royalties. So if that's a driver for you to make sure you are giving Rob Liefeld more money, this is a thing that I feel like he's talked about several like he loves to mention how much money he's made off of it.
Yeah.
And and like when you're like, oh, if you're a fan and go up to him and you're like, I have so many Deadpool things and blah blah blah, he's just like, thanks for all the money.
Yeah.
And it's just like, you don't want to hear that as a fan, even if he's like joking. It's kind of just like, oh
Yeah.
this guy, you know.
Now I know where your heart lies, Rob.
Yeah. Sometimes in interviews he comes across as a sweetie, and then other times he comes across as like, I would love more of your money, please. So
yeah.
Interesting dude. Enjoy your walks on the beaches, Rob.
I'll present this without commentary. Rob Liefeld is the Pantera of comics.
I love it. No commentary needed.
Yeah.
All right. More Marvel stuff. Very marvelous week. Marvel 85. It's the 85th anniversary of Marvel. They released like a special issue, and they did this little video that kind of got me in my feelings on their Instagram. But it ended with Red Hulk standing up from behind like a presidential podium and roaring, which I thought was really funny. I don't think we'd seen that clip yet from Thunderbolts, so there was a little bit of a surprise at the very, very end of that video.
That's great.
That's like kind of like what's coming next for Marvel. So that was great. But out of Marvel 85 and their 85th anniversary issue, there's a story in particular that's kind of making headlines, wherein Kamala Khan is shown as a grown-up, and she has become the Herald of Galactus. And apparently it's a really cool, fun short. And it's written by Iman Vellani, who played Kamala Khan in the Miss Marvel TV show.
Yeah.
And if you didn't know, she's been writing Miss Marvel for a little while now. That I think she did at least 2 X-Men tie-in miniseries that I thought were great. I think there might have been a co-writer on the first one. I don't know about the second one. And maybe that was just like to help with some of the like continuity stuff with like all the complexities of all the different X-Men crud that had been going on at the same time to make sure we weren't like overlapping lines. But they were 2 really good comics. And I think that's so rad to have this cool young actress who's playing this character who grew up kind of like being a fan and seeing herself in the character, is now writing this with an obvious love for comics and the medium. Is just like, you love to see it. I think it's really cool.
Totally. Yeah. Seeing anybody whose job is their passion and passion is their job.
Yeah.
Like, I think this is the clearest example, right? Because there's that picture of her in Miss Marvel cosplay
before she was cast in the movie. She she cosplayed or like had done Halloween costumes as Miss Marvel. Like that rules.
It's just so great. Yeah,
that's so cool.
It's so dope. Yeah, and to see her like transition to the source material too is like, it's too cool to even like mention.
Yeah,
you know.
Yeah.
It's awesome.
I love it. That's one of like the happiest stories in comics, I think.
Totally.
Okay, now we're going to get into a little more of the weeds with some comic book news.
Perfect.
There's a second print of Power Fantasy coming out, and it is apparently like sold out. What that means is basically like everything available for order has been ordered, and it's like already selling a bunch online. So it's going to a third printing. I think I read there's one other book that's gone to a second subsequent printing as fast as Power Fantasy, and it was Saga, at least for independence.
That's incredible.
Yeah. So I don't know. I love Kieran Gillen. I love Casper Wingard.
Yeah.
And this is an indie that I think the synopsis of it is like actually, I haven't had a chance to read it yet. Have you read it?
Yes. So
did we cover this on the podcast?
Yeah, I think Greg must have covered it.
Yeah,
I read it this week, and I think I remember him saying there's a lot of words. It's Kieran Gillen books.
Yeah,
that tracks. Kind of the synopsis is that there are 6 superheroes in the world, and whatever, more or less, if they use their powers, they're going to destroy the world.
Okay.
So they have to one of or two of the 6 superheroes have to stop the others from using their powers, but one of them has already done so.
Yeah. Okay.
That's the elevator pitch.
Yeah. It's interesting. It's interesting to see Kieran Gillen do more like straight up superhero stuff. They've always done fantasy, sci-fi sort of comics and have written like X-Men stuff, but it's always like the thinkier X-Men stuff. But really fun to see a indie that's just like, here are like 6 cool superpowered people, and like what's Kieran Gillen gonna do with that?
Yeah,
so,
this book feels a lot like Wick Div.
Yeah, right.
Wicked and Divine.
And I'll say that book, which at the time felt like one that you absolutely had to get your hands on the first issue because it was going to be the next big thing.
Yeah.
Eventually the hype dies down. They never made a Wicked and Divine television show, and you can buy that in like a bargain bin.
God, a Wick Div TV show would be so good.
Wouldn't it be good? That was such a fun comic. But is that going to be the case with Power Fantasy? Some things are a little different now with things getting optioned really quick based on their success. There's a lot of heat around this comic on the secondary market, and with the printings in association with like some things that only like Saga has achieved as an independent comic. So maybe one, even though if you didn't get your hands on it in a shop, might be one to splurge the $10 for on eBay now to make sure you get your hands on a copy just in case. I don't know. If at a minimum you're going to be in the conversation that way, and it'll be fun to be like, hey, I was there when Power Fantasy started. So that book's got an absolute ton of heat. And those second print issues come out this coming Wednesday as of this recording. So if you get to your shops early, you should have some extra fun, different covers for the second printing to pick up.
Good stuff.
And then our other obscure comic book nerd news hit is the absolute Batman logo.
This is my favorite argument.
So right now, there's this new version of Batman that's going to be written in the coming year. It's going to come out in like October or November. Does that timeline sound right?
Yeah, pretty soon.
But Batman's logo in it is basically a rectangle with the tiny, tiny spikes where you would see the normal kind of like bat wings come to a point and the bat ears come to a point. Yeah. But it is really just like a block with teeny tiny points. And there are some people who are like, I love this. On the bat suit, it's utilitarian and it serves as like a chest plate and extra protection. And I love that. And then from a design aesthetic standpoint, it's like brutalist. It's like the most Batman thing ever. Just like so simple, but still a bat, and like over the top and different. Like we've seen a million Batman comics and the logo's always been the same, aside from like Frank Miller going like a little big. Now we're taking that Frank Miller logo and like doing the most maximalist like version of it, where it is just like a rectangle.
Yeah. I think this is silly for a couple of reasons.
But other people fucking hate it. Yeah. If you had a penny for every tweet that was like, fuck this logo, you would be rich.
Yeah. It's so dumb. It's so dumb because like, number one, it's part of a costume. It's like when people argue about Superman's underpants.
Yeah.
You know, they should be on the outside or what. Like it's so dumb. Mm-hmm. And also, this is just Nick Dragata's stylistic interpretation of this costume.
It's very stylistic. Batman in this is a brick house.
Yeah.
He is massive.
Yeah. And I mean, I would compare Nick Dragata's drawing of Batman to Kelly Jones' drawing of Batman with the ears.
Yeah.
Right.
Right.
it's a stylistic choice.
Oh, one thing I love about the ears is they also have a functionality. Have you seen that? So the new Nick Dragata Absolute, is it Absolute Batman?
Yeah, it's absolute. Yep.
He can reach up into his head, pull the bat ears out, and they're little daggers.
Hell yeah.
Isn't that cool?
That's incredible.
How has no one done that before?
I don't know. So what I will say about this, look up the Jim Lee variant for issue number 1, and you'll see more of the reason that it looks the way it does. It's scaled.
The lightning cover?
The lightning cover. It's scaled.
Oh, it
right?
does have scale, like chainmail.
Yep. And in that cover, he's got an axe that looks like that logo.
Oh, hell yeah.
So my thought is that axe head is like magnetic on his chest, and he can like pop it off to make it a weapon.
Yeah. So the whole thing is like, so Batman is famous for his utility belt.
Yeah.
The next evolution of Batman would be so utilitarian.
The rest of his costume.
Just like we mentioned the ears, like everything's got an extra purpose it serves.
Yeah.
Like I've seen one of the spec drawings where like his back has like little spikes that can pop out, like telescoping spikes that come out along his spine.
His cape has claws on the end that he can use to like pull bad guys to him. And yeah.
I think I am going to splurge on the Ian Bertram variant. There's a 1 in 25 variant for the first issue, and it is gorgeous.
Let me look it up.
You're gonna agree.
Oh, hang on. This
looks rad.
Oh yeah, I thought that was a Raphael Grandpa for a second.
No, yeah, they do kind of have a similar vibe.
Yep.
There is a foil cover of just the logo for this too, which I think
sold.
I think is also funny just because there's so much conversation around it that it's like, yeah, do one that's just like blank background, the logo centered. Like, I think that's kind of a fun statement.
I'm buying that.
That'll be like, hey, remember when all of comic book discourse was whether you liked or hated this logo? Like I think that'll be a really fun cover to have. So I'm like committed to like 3 different covers for Absolute Batman 1. I think it'll be a fun series. And then the second issue, I want to say the second issue had an amazing B cover of Batman on a roof with like a bunch of people who just got beat to shit.
Sure. Definitely.
You just like never know we're there as like a pedestrian on the street, but this roof is just like full of baddies that just got beat up. Some already like a lot of just like weird iconic art coming out of this, just because I think it's ignited something in creatives working on Batman that like, okay, on this one we can go a little wild, or it doesn't have to be so in the confines of what we know Batman to be or what Batman should be or is. So it's breaking the mold a little bit already, and we haven't even gotten any of the story yet. I know we know like conceptually kind of like who Bruce Wayne is in this alternate telling of Batman, but not much else.
Yeah.
So I love it. It's an exciting time to get into Batman if you've been waiting for a time to jump back in or a story to do so.
Yeah, I'm jazzed about it. It's going to be great.
Yeah. So, like it or not, fun to be part of the conversation. There was that tweet that kind of went viral of some guy like yelling at James Gunn about it. And James Gunn was like, I don't have anything to do with the comic books, the creatives there, like how they decide to draw anything. He was like, don't Talk to me about it.
Did you see Scott Snyder's tweet about it?
No, I don't think so.
So Scott Snyder's the writer of the series. His tweet was the picture of the logo, and he said, "Every mean tweet grows it 1%." So good.
Oh, I love it.
Fuck
it's
you.
like, we will make it bigger.
Yeah.
All right, how do you feel about getting into comic books?
I feel great about it, Mike.
All right, let's do the dang thing. Should we start with Marvel?
Yeah, I can start with
I feel like we should.
the House of Ideas here.
Happy birthday. Happy 85th, Marvel.
Yes, happy day, happy day. So I'm covering all the big books from the last couple of weeks. We'll start with Aliens versus Avengers.
Yeah.
This is Jonathan Hickman and Esad Ribic reuniting for the first time since Secret Wars 2015.
Oh, wild.
Yep. This takes place in the future for sure, where I think it's who are the bird people, the X-Men bird people? Are they the Shi'ar?
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I think it's like a Shi'ar scientist has like gone rogue.
Yep.
And started experimenting with the xenomorphs.
I would not have thought of them as bird people, but now that you say it, I know what you mean.
Yeah, aren't they bird people?
I don't think they're like technically bird people.
They're like triangle heads or feathers, aren't they?
Yeah.
Okay, well, I thought they were bird people. They're feathered individuals. Sorry, that was pretty racist of me. I apologize to all of our avian friends.
Okay, if you Google Shi'ar and nothing else, the third result on my Google anyway is, are the Shi'ar birds? We're going to click on that. They possess both mammalian and avian characteristics, however, are just humanoid bodies with feathered heads.
Okay. All right. Well, I'm not the only one that was confused, I guess. All right.
In ancient times, they had wings. And some genetic anomalies still have wings.
Yeah, Deathbird.
You're very right. I don't know why I just never totally thought of them as bird people, but you're totally right.
Well, in fairness, they're not bird people. They're just feathered
humanoids
folks
with feathers for on their heads instead of hair. Now we can move on.
In any case, now that we've got that minutia hammered out, there's like a rogue sect of them that has been experimenting with xenomorph eggs.
Yep.
And Black Panther, I guess still has or will have again. Do you remember when they did Intergalactic Empire of Wakanda?
Yeah, that was cool.
So that is like a thing, and Black Panther's out to stop them because these people have been sending eggs to planets, and obviously the xenomorphs overrun the planet. Well, of course they send an egg to Earth, and it overruns the planet. The story starts post-apocalypse.
Oh, wow. Cool.
So we get Bruce Banner, Captain Marvel, and Valeria Richards.
Yep. Only heavy hitters are left, maybe, is what I'm understanding.
That's pretty much it. And Wayland from the Wayland Yutani.
Oh,
Mr. Wayland
okay.
is there. They're folding him in.
Cool.
Yeah. So they're in like Wayland Tower.
Yeah.
That's like the last bastion of humanity, basically. And Valeria, yada, 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 story happens. Valeria says, I can create a disease that will kill the xenomorphs while they're eggs.
Yeah.
Right? Because once they're out of the egg, it's basically game over. They're going to latch onto somebody's face.
Yep.
And whatever. It's going to happen. So that's like the kickoff to the book. And we're going to see, obviously, Captain Marvel and the Hulk, and Miles Morales shows up.
Yep.
Fighting xenomorphs, trying to create this disease that will rid the world of the xenomorphs once and for all.
Cool. I love it.
And I will say there's a twist at the end involving Miles that is very cool.
Okay.
I don't want to spoil it for anybody because it's like the cool thing. I'm sure you'll see the twist is going to be on a cover of, issue 4 or whatever. So, you'll see it at some point, but it's very cool.
All right.
As a fan of Avengers and Aliens, this was like a must purchase for me.
The cover's rad. It's kind of an expensive comic, so I understand people who skip it.
$8 an issue.
Yeah.
But it's only a 4-issue series.
Yeah.
And there's no ads.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah. So
it's an ad for Aliens.
It's an ad for Aliens. That's fair. I really liked it. I'm jazzed about this series. The fact that they got Jonathan Hickman to write it is like blowing my mind.
For longtime Marvel fans and X-heads, you'll know that the Marvel has a comp for Aliens. Mm-hmm. That is The Brood.
Yep.
And ever since they got their hands on Aliens as a publisher, I've been curious if they were ever going to do The Brood versus Xenomorphs or like cross over those two characters.
Yeah.
Any inkling of that happening in this comic?
No.
Okay.
I'll say not yet.
Yeah.
I mean, we still have 3 issues of 48-page comic to go.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of room to grow. And with Hickman writing, fresh off X-Men, who knows what this guy's going to do.
Yeah, right.
I would love to see it, but
that'd be fun.
Not in issue 1.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What was I going to say about it? I think goes without saying, but just in case anybody's curious, not an in-canon story.
It takes place in the future.
Okay, so this is like maybe a potential future that could be avoided.
Yeah, I'll say it's not out of canon.
Yeah, okay.
None of these guys are like, oh, hey, it's the Hulk, and the Hulk is Captain America also.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, it's like they wanted to give Hickman the room to like write something in canon, but didn't want to have, Xenomorphs attack New York in the middle of Blood Hunt.
Yeah, right. Well, one of the things that's tricky about this, which we won't get into the weeds of it too much, but Marvel's had the rights to properties like this before, and then properties to things, licenses for things that are like movies get bought by other production companies and things like that. And then all of a sudden you have all these comics that are really hard to reprint for all of the legal reasons. So that's part of the reason why you're seeing the Alien stuff as miniseries and not just like, hey, a great Avengers run is going on. Like, why don't we make it just like a Avengers issue 23 through 27?
Yeah.
It's because they want to be able to reprint their run of Avengers and keep it kind of like separate for.
I think smartly they have introduced this 20th Studios imprint.
Yeah, where they do all that stuff. Yeah, on a different smaller publisher.
Aliens, Predator are all printed under 20th Century Studios, basically as a Marvel production.
Yeah, right.
So, Aliens, Avengers, totally worth it. Go pick it up.
All right, recommend.
Another 20th Century Studios comic that I read is Predator versus Black Panther.
Yeah.
by Benjamin Percy and Chris Allen. This is another really fun book. I think if you gave me Predator and the Marvel Universe, I don't think I would come up with Predator versus Black Panther. But after reading it, it's like, this is such a no-brainer. Like, it's 2 stealth characters stealthing off against each other.
Yeah, totally. That makes sense.
And to compound that, you get a story of this predator who's trying to prove himself as like the next leader of his clan. So you get this story. There's this story that the Predator dad has a spear made of vibranium, and that's what makes the Predator want to go to Earth to get it. And then at the end of the book, he like turns on Wakanda's shields and like locks everybody in and out.
Yeah.
So you get this like,
very self-contained thing.
Yeah, like you're not trapped in here with me. I'm trapped in here together. So it's going to be so cool. I'm so jazzed about this book, the way it's going. And Benjamin Percy is obviously like the person to be writing it. His Predator runs were just absolutely incredible.
Well, and I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but in Marvel canon, the vibranium deposits in Wakanda are from a meteorite, right?
Correct.
They came from outer space, so it would make sense that characters from space could possibly have come across vibranium and are now seeking other sources of it.
Yeah, it's exactly right.
Yeah.
It's a cool...
In addition to hunting the most dangerous game.
Exactly.
Which is superheroes.
I think that's one of the cool things I think about this book is that like Black Panther is much like the Marines in the first movie, incidentally caught up in this quest this Predator has.
Yeah.
He's out for the vibranium. He doesn't care about Black Panther.
Yep.
Which makes it like almost a twist on the original movie, right?
Yeah, right. The other way around. Yeah.
You have a couple of Predators looking for vibranium and Black Panther's trying to stop them.
Yeah.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
It's cool. I'm jazzed about this one. So
cool. Yeah, that sounds good.
The Fox stuff this week is really just knocking it out of the park.
I see. You see the stuff where it's just like got a 20th Century Fox logo on it, and it's a big, funky crossover, and my brain just goes to these are going to be throwaway things, and then they get amazing creatives on them, and you're like, shit. Now I have to buy these. They sound so good.
I can tell that they sought out creators for all these books, like even Planet of the Apes. That was the most throwaway one to me.
Yeah.
And it's like, this is really good.
Mm-hmm.
I think they just got people that were passionate about the IP.
Yeah, right.
Because you can tell that, Benjamin Percy really gives a shit about Predator.
Right.
So... And they give them the flexibility to create stories in that universe. That's the other key, right?
Yeah, right.
I also read Phases of the Moon Knight. This was Erica Schultz and Benjamin Percy writing.
Ooh.
This is not exactly Moon Knight verse, but basically Moon Knight verse. We're getting multiple stories an issue about different avatars of Khonshu throughout the years.
Yeah.
So this issue was the vengeance of the Moon Knight, the bad Moon Knight that Mark Spector is currently fighting, the Shroud. You get a pretty intimate story about him and what made him want to take up the mantle of Moon Knight.
Yep.
Which was very cool because we haven't gotten that, filler story yet. And then the other story is about a crusader who is going on a quest and yada yada and has to make a deal with Khonshu to become the Moon Knight. And then he fights Apocalypse in Egypt.
Oh, cool.
Which is like totally rad. Yeah. So not a necessary book by any stretch of the imagination, but for those of us that are tickled by the alternate versions of the heroes you know and love, this is like a no-brainer for sure.
It tastes of Edge of Spider-Verse.
That's exactly right.
Where it just like introduces all the different multiversal versions of like what Spider-Man could have ended up as in under different circumstances.
Yep.
But this isn't different universes. These are just avatars of the moon god through time.
Yep.
And I don't know, are they all going to get slammed into like an event book?
I don't
at some
think
point.
so.
It's just like interesting stories to maybe build to the importance of Mark Spector as maybe like an end all be all avatar to explain why like he's stuck through so much of the
what
job.
makes him like the Moon Knight,
Yeah.
not a Moon Knight.
Why
Because
he keeps coming back from the dead and
and Khonshu clearly like favors him, right? For some reason. And that is one thing too, where like if people aren't familiar with the lore of Moon Knight and you read Blood Hunt and you were like, wait, who are all these other Moon Knights?
Yeah.
It's like, well, here are some of them. You know, they're not just like zombies or mummies, right? They're in theory actual characters who live lives and were heroes.
I was excited to see in some of the solicits for the newer Moon Knight stuff coming out in the next few months that it looks like we're getting some Midnight Mission back together.
Oh yeah.
And I really loved the Jed McKay Midnight Mission stuff, which was I think kind of early on in his run. That started maybe oh my gosh, it's probably 3 or 4 years ago now. But really fun stuff. If you have Marvel Unlimited or something, I would recommend checking out that Jed McKay's Moon Knight run because it's fun.
Yeah, I guess you could read it. I guess I'd recommend it. Yeah, I mean it's some of the best Moon Knight that's been written.
Yeah,
it's incredible. Yeah, and I love seeing the gang get back together too.
Yep.
And then the last one I read is another Hickman book. It's Wolverine Revenge, which again was a surprise to me to see Jonathan Hickman write something like this.
Yeah. This comic had a lot of buzz, and there was
it earned it.
a handful of variant covers that people were clamoring for this past week. We're selling like the 1 in 25 was selling for like $50 or something at one point.
Yeah. Well, it's also Greg Capullo's return to Marvel. This is the first interior he's done for them in 20 years or something.
That's
like
cool.
An insane amount of time.
Yep.
But the story also lives up to all this hype. That's the wild part.
Yeah.
It's again, like the world ends. I don't know if Marvel was like, Jonathan, how many times do you want to end the world? And he was like, let's see. But the kickoff is Magneto dies and his death triggers an EMP that like wipes out all electronics in like the Western hemisphere.
Yeah, that's an interesting idea. That's fun.
And so Nick Fury recruits Wolverine to go and they're going to steal like a power core or something in a power plant in Russia. Or in Canada, whatever, somewhere, some other country. They're going to steal this generator so they can like restart the Western world, right?
Yeah.
And they get ambushed by Deadpool and Omega Red and whatever, some other guy, and then Colossus is also there.
Hey.
Whatever. So they get ambushed. And so the revenge part, I have to spoil it, unfortunately. I have to spoil it to talk about. Go for
it, yeah.
But they kill Bucky and Captain America and Maria Hill and all the Howling Commandos.
The Russians?
Yeah, this super team, Colossus included. So, and the way they do it is,
I'm surprised this hasn't been on Fox News.
Marvel blows up Captain America.
If they're gonna get so mad about pregnant Joker, they're not mad about a bunch of Russians killing Captain America.
No, because that's what you expect from a Russian.
Yeah.
But they implant bombs in these guys' chests and then detonate them. And of course they do the same thing to Wolverine, but Wolverine regenerates.
Yeah.
And that's what cues the
revenge. The titular revenge.
The titular revenge. Yeah. So it was a really fun read. Pretty lighthearted, pretty gory. They did do a red band version of this. Greg Capullo is like right in his element, writing these like rock and roll stories
Yeah.
that are super fun.
Right.
And I can tell that Jonathan Hickman too is like not taking this too seriously. So
Cool. I love it.
Absolute banger of a couple of weeks out from our favorite red colored comic book label.
I can't remember if I pre-ordered this book. Partially just because there's a bunch of new X-Men books right now. And there was a couple X-Men miniseries. And I was like, what do I invest in? What's going to matter? And of course now it's like, oh shit, this one's cool. You want to read that one.
Yeah.
But at the time it was like, decide between these 3 different Wolverine books that any one of them could be throwaway and any one of them could end up being cool or important in the ongoing storyline. I think Chris Claremont has a Wolverine book that like just started or is about to start in a week.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
it's another mini, I think.
Yeah.
Well, figure out if you ordered it, and I'll stop by the LCS and see if they've got extra copies.
Ooh. I'll let you know. I need to give you my wish list every single week of what I missed pre-ordering, and you could pick it up for me.
I would.
I'll give you an allowance for me.
What'd you read, Mike D?
I read the indies this week, and the first book on my plate was Convert, out on Image Comics. It's a John Arcudi book, if you've heard of him. And I normally don't call out the full creative teams, but the illustration and coloring on this was so lovely. So Savannah Finley was the illustrator and Miguel Coe was the colorist.
And the colors in this book were so striking.
Yeah, they're gorgeous. It was a really pretty book. So if you're somebody who just likes pretty comics and that's your top priority, you can't pass this one up. Go pick it up at your local comic shop. I'm going to probably spoil the first issue, but
that's okay.
There's not a lot to talk about without spoiling the first issue. And again, it's a series. This should get you to pick up the first issue and the subsequent issues, because I think this is it's going to be a cool series that I'm really interested by. So it's a team of astronauts that travel to this like green planet that's brimming with animal life and plant life. And while they're on this planet exploring, they're attempting to repair something on the ship that causes an accident and kills all of the team members except for one lone survivor. The comic is told from this singular, isolated survivor's experience. So you never actually see any of the other crew members, which is really interesting. You get kind of introduced to them and who they were through like a dream he has, kind of like a survivor's guilt dream that takes place, which was like, I think, such an interesting way to, give us some more context for the story, but still make it feel really isolated and lonely at the same time. So just like fantastic writing, I think. We kind of are absorbing the story through his journals that he's also writing, kind of in dialogue with the person he imagines will eventually find his journals. So it's very like to you.
Yeah.
So it feels like you're getting this personal glimpse into like his days of like survival and can I do this? And then days of defeat, which is, like great contrast between each other too. But he kind of reaches a point towards the end of the story where he really doesn't have what it takes to survive in this world because so much of the flora and fauna are basically toxic to him. So he kind of gives up, fades to sleep for what we as the reader expect to be the last time. It seems like this comic is going to be a one-shot. And then you turn the page and you find out there are some humanoid type creatures on the planet who have discovered his body. So much more to this planet than our explorers expected, didn't think that intelligent life lived here, and they've found this guy. So next issue, we'll find out to what extent they're intelligent, what they more of maybe what they look like. There's just a lot to be discovered, whether they welcome him with open arms and teach him their ways, or if he's kind of like a prisoner or food. Like, we don't know. So,
Or a god.
or a god, right? Really exciting cliffhanger.
Yeah.
To see where this goes from there.
Very cool.
Yeah.
And what's the publisher?
Image.
Of course.
So should be easy to find at your comic shops.
Yeah. That sounds dope.
All right. And then your next book is out on Distillery, and it's called Life. It is magazine sized. It is not Life magazine. It is a comic book called Life that is magazine sized. It is by Stephanie Phillips and Brian Azzarello.
Did this have, I'm sorry to cut you off already. Did this have
So frustrated.
a flippy flop thing where you flip it over and it was like a different story?
It is sold as a kind of flip book. It says that in the solicits.
Yeah. Okay.
However, there's really more of just like a part 1 and part 2
Okay.
of this. And you can tell that, I'm assuming anyway, this isn't like explicitly stated in the like copy that I got. Like, Brian Azzarello wrote the first part and Stephanie Phillips wrote the second part, but that's what I've gleaned from how the book was structured, that one of them took each side of the story.
And so this is like Local Man, where you like flip the book over and it's like a different part of the story.
I have a digital copy of it, and so it didn't work that way.
Sure.
For the digital copy, it may work that way for the physical copy.
Okay.
Another potential shortcoming of digital comic books. We did a whole thing on our Patreon about the purchase experience of this Distillery comic book, because they're trying to be really unique in their digital marketplace. So if you're interested in like what they're trying to do different and how we perceive it's working, we had a good like 15-20 minute conversation about it over there.
Yeah. I held the physical copy in my hand and like did that thing, and I couldn't. That was what I read. I was like, oh, this is like Local Man.
Yeah. It very well could be structured that way. Let me break it down for you what those two different stories were. So in one, we have a team of thieves who are going to a long defunct prison colony where diamonds used to be mined.
Sure.
And they're basically trying to like clean up on the reserves that may have been left behind after like these like, future space wars. This is set like in the future when there's space travel, a lot of different people on it, a lot of different planets. They've basically said like, let's go on this heist. This planet should be empty. It's forgotten about in this like unclaimed war territory.
Sure. As you do.
Right. Exactly. In the other story, it's set in the past, and you follow a couple murderers who are sentenced to multiple life sentences, basically like one for each of their victim, which is like it's kind of like a fun storytelling thing to be like, this guy has like, how much of a like badass or terrible person are these people? Like, this guy had 32 life sentences. This other guy has like 100. So you're like, Jesus, this guy killed 100 people. How? So they are transported to work on this aforementioned prison colony.
Sure.
But at the end of the issue, we realize the kind of like cliffhanger here and why the book is called Life is they have figured out a way to prolong human life. And as a part of your sentence, you are forced to live out all of your life sentences working in this mining colony.
Yikes.
So rather than the death penalty, which like all of these people would favor at this point, this murderer who killed 32 people is living 32 subsequent lives in a row, just constantly working his entire life.
Yikes.
So you're kind of like learning like in future America, like big business has taken over the industrial prison complex and outsourced it to this other planet and has found a way to make even more money off of these prisoners longer term. So kind of an interesting commentary on that. So the books are obviously colliding at the end of the first part that I explained.
Yeah.
They're like landing on this planet and being like, all these people should be dead by like over 100 years or more. Like, why are we getting like life form readings? And then it's going to be, you know, like a fucked up planet of abandoned people who are half immortal.
Yeah, it's Space Australia.
Who are probably at their wits' end. True Space Australia scenario. In the background of this, there's also like a love story, and then there's this like adventurer / influencer character who isn't really in it for the diamonds. They're kind of like in it because they're a celebrity and all their followers love to see them go on adventures and stuff. And so they're kind of like the benefactor of this thieving crew that's looking for the diamonds. So really interesting concept. Obviously with these distillery books, they're like massive, have more stories, more pages to tell more of the story. Yeah. So it's like a really complex first issue with a lot of interesting things going on, I think. And really fun twist there. I'll say that the art style is a little muddy, and it's tough to differentiate the characters a bit. And it's tough to tell when you do that jump to the past, like, how far in the past are you? Are any of these, am I supposed to interpret that these characters are related to, or maybe actually are some of the characters from the first part of the story? Like, I almost wish I would have read the synopsis or listened to a podcast that kind of explained the thing before I read it, because it would have made the like initial reading experience a little more rewarding. But all that to say, this is a recommend from me. I think the second story I don't know which writer wrote which one, but the one set in the past, I think, read a little better to me. I enjoyed that story a little more.
It'll be cool to see if you can read, once all this is all said and done, if you can read it in any order. Yeah,
right. Can I read all of the flip side first and then all of the
the other side, right?
The other side in a row second, and are they like cohesive? Yeah,
that would be interesting.
Yep, I've thought that too about, you know, the release cadence of the one hand and the six fingers is like a sci-fi murder mystery, and the way you've got two separate comics telling one story, each from a perspective of a different character, one the murderer and the other the detective.
Yeah.
And that's been so fun to read. And I'm reading it in its release cadence week to week. But it would be fun to, I think, revisit that one and be like, what if I read all of the one hand, and what's that reading experience like?
What's interesting about that is the hardcover or the deluxe of that prints them in printing order.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, so they alternate back and forth. That is the intended reading order.
Yeah, okay.
So
maybe I'll leave it be then, if that's what the artist wanted.
Yeah. Well, that's it, right?
That's an episode.
That's an episode.
We did it.
Woo!
Ow!
Woo! Yee! Got it covered. Thank you so much for being here with us. Thank you for watching us on YouTube. As I'm assuming you're listening to our podcast, I'm assuming you're going to YouTube and then watching the entire episode again. I'm assuming that you're subscribed to us on Patreon, patreon.com/firstissueclub. I'm also assuming that you communicate with us on Discord. We've got a great community of not only ourselves, but like-minded comic book fans who talk about the benefits and detractions of League of Comics Geeks versus CLZ. So if that sounds like an interesting conversation to you, jump on in.
A lot of great new additions lately. Like, I've loved, we've had like a good 5 or 10 people join in the last week or so, and it's been really fun kind of getting to know everybody's comic taste and having more rad people to chat with about comics. I love it. I think our Discord's like, even when it grows, it like people are down to have like real conversations, and it doesn't feel like it's one of those places that's like so big and so detached from other people personally that like it's a conversation you can't follow, or like everyone kind of gets to know each other in a way that like no one's like detached and mean, which like when you go to like comic book Reddit sometimes and like somebody slams you, you're like, oh man. But I think we've fostered like a really cool community on the Discord, and I love being able to chat comics with everybody there.
Yeah. Well, and one of our newer members worked 3 miles away from the house I grew up in Detroit.
Oh, wild.
Which is like insane to me. So, it's a small world. It's a small community, but we're gathered from all over. It's great stuff. So,
yeah.
I think I covered all the bases. You got anything else to say, Mike D?
Bag and boredom.
I love it.
Bye.